Visit Avery.com, Avary, for the most up-to-date news and information on Team Avery.
Avery, 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 Avery.
The Video Archives podcast with Quentin Tarantino and Roger Avery is back for season 2. Head on over to patreon.com/videoarchives to get ad-free exclusive content and bonus episodes. This is the Gala Show. I'm your reporter on the beat, Gala Avery. On this episode, you may know my guest as the Toronto-based recording artist for Dispatch and Metalheads, or you might know him as one half of Scanners Inc., or maybe you know him as the guy who has been scanning those 35mm prints into 4K all over Twitter. Yeah, I know it's a hotly debated topic, and some even assumed it was AI doing it, but no, he's a real guy, and I've got him here on the mic tonight. Please welcome to the show, NC-17, also known as Peter. Hey, Peter.
That's quite the intro. Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited to be here, and also thank you to Filmpower for allowing us to do this interview because Peter came in all the way from, was it Toronto?
Toronto, yeah. Snowy Toronto.
All the way in from snowy Toronto, and we were here at Filmpower about to see Rolling Thunder together, and I'm so excited because it's my first time seeing it.
It's been a long time for me too. It's been at least 10 years since I've seen it. That's why I was like really pumped to see this.
I'm so excited. So before we bring up the topic for today, I have a question for you. You mentioned that you're a father, and this is my favorite topic to ask people who are parents. How do you choose what movies to show your child?
Pretty much with my son, I honestly, he can pretty much watch anything as long as it's not too sexual.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but if it's like, let's say Friday the 13th, Freddy, even if it's an Italian horror movie like Demons or the Fulci stuff, he's cool with it. I mean, I've even shown my son The Exorcist and he loves it. Mm-hmm. Then a movie like, let's say Hellraiser, I haven't shown it to him yet because it has a lot of those sexual undertones.
BDSM.
Yeah. And I don't think he's quite ready for those kind of films yet. But when it comes to cinema, like, look, when I was a kid, I watched everything. Mm-hmm. And I feel like I turned out okay.
That's always what my dad says and what Quentin says. And also what I say, because like my dad was showing me stuff like Baron Munchausen, Planet Sauvage, Yellow Submarine, like all these kind of like psychedelic movies when I was a kid. And we talk about it now and it's like, would people show that to a child now? And the answer is like, I don't know, but I turned out just fine.
Well, for me, honestly, I think if you like those kids on the street that weren't allowed to see R-rated movies, I used to always just look at it as like kind of soft, like, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, for me, movies don't make people do violent acts.
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, I turned out okay. And he seems to like love it. He brags to his friends about it, which I tell him not to. Because I've had a couple of parents be like, you really let him watch that? And I'm just like...
But I bet that when you're showing your son a movie, you're giving him proper context. As a father, you're kind of telling him, or do you kind of just show it to him and like let him see?
It depends. I mean, he watches, like when he watches like a Nightmare on Elm Street movie, for example, or like Jason, he kind of sees those characters as, I don't want to say superheroes, but they're very animated.
Yeah, they are.
Right?
It's almost like a comic book. So
it really attracts to him. While certain films, like let's say Psycho, he's not like ready yet for. He's not into. He finds it boring. It has to kind of have that really true horror feel to it for him to like it. And then, like I said, there are some films that I like. For example, I obviously wouldn't show him Cannibal Holocaust or anything like that.
Of course.
But he's seen Zombie.
Oh, yeah. My dad showed me Zombie when I was a kid, though.
I'll be honest with you. I bring him to all of when I was doing the programming at the Kingsway, I literally brought him to all the screenings.
That's awesome.
Right? Literally every single one. And I will never forget, we watched RoboCop.
That's amazing.
And I mean, like that's a kid's movie anyways,
I
right?
watched that as a kid.
Right? And like, dude, they were selling toys of RoboCop in Walmart.
Yeah.
But I remember when he shoots him in like the like midsection, and he's like in the theater, he's like, he just shot him in the ding ding. And then the whole cinema like erupted and started laughing. So
That's awesome.
it was funny.
Now, as always, my guest gets to bring their topic to the mic. So, Peter, why don't you tell us what your topic is and why you decided to choose it?
I think my topic is mainly talking about the Blu-ray label that we're starting, Scanners Inc., and just to bring awareness of the current state of home media versus film, and like just the big differences of it, and why it's such an important topic for me and why I'm so passionate about it. Before we get into the topic, this is our commercial break.
Back by popular demand, the Video Archives merch store is up and running. Get your favorite t-shirts, hats, notebooks, stickers, and more at videoarchivesmerch.com. You know me. I write all my notes in the Notes on Cinema notebook, the Gala edition, of course. Check out videoarchivesmerch.com to get yours today. Hey, thanks so much for being a loyal listener. If you want to keep up with me off mic, make sure to follow me on Instagram at Gala Avery.
And now we're back.
You heard it here. That is the topic for today. Scanners Inc. I've got 30 minutes on the clock and our time starts now. So how did Scanners Inc. come about?
I mean, we'd have to go way back.
Let's go way back.
We'd have to go way back. I mean, really, it started when I started collecting movies, right? I started collecting movies with Laserdiscs in like the early 90s, and then moved on to like DVDs and stuff like that. And then you want to take it to the next level. Then you start collecting posters and other. And then I started to collect film. I started to get interested in collecting 35 millimeter movies. And I'll never forget. And I actually was in LA when I bought this print. I bought my first print was Zombie Fulci.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was my first print. And then once I got that print, I felt obligated to get more films.
Do you still have that print?
All of them. Yeah. Well, yeah, I still have it. We just recently showed it at the Kingsway. But yeah, I still have that print. And then it just, from there, I just slowly started collecting. And then just really, and this is going back to like 2004 or 5. And then I had the aspirations of like doing programming, right? And then there came a certain point around 2015, 2016, 17, that area. Can't remember exactly when, where I was like, you know what? I have about 30, 40 prints now. And let me approach some cinemas and see if like I could get like, you know, show some of my prints or do some programming or whatever. And basically every cinema just like would not respond to my emails.
Really?
Yeah, nothing. And I would tell them like what I had, right?
And you have some good stuff.
Yeah, at that point I had like 40 movies, but the 40 movies I had were choice movies. They were all Italian horror movies mainly. And there was no filler, it was all killer. Now my collection is like 200-300, but they're like, there's a lot of filler in there. But at that time I had and I still have most of them. They were like the creme de la creme of prints. And I went to a lot of the main cinemas in the city, like the Review, TIFF, the Fox, all of them basically. Every single one would just like not respond, no, like totally blank me. So then what I started doing was going to the theaters with my prints. And they'd like look at me and then be like, who's this like guy who's dressed like a cat burglar with 2 like 35 millimeter movies?
You were going punk and like rogue.
100% punk exactly is the word. And it wasn't until my wife and I We went to some random bookshop. I'll never forget this. And I saw like this little flyer, and it was a back-to-back special of Revenge of the Ninja and Enter the Ninja. So Enter the Ninja and then Revenge of the Ninja. And I was like, what theater is this? And it was the Kingsway. I'd known the Kingsway. I'd gone to it, but I didn't think it was open. And I basically contacted the guy, and he was the only guy to even respond, let alone he was the only guy to respond. And literally from there, he was like, yeah, you can show some movies here. Very open, very, very he was just didn't even ask any questions. He was just like, yeah, it's cool. And then from there, gave me the inspiration to collect more. And I was pretty much programming at the Kingsway from 2018. And then I just recently stopped this last year, but he's still doing the night. And I still go there almost every Friday.
So shout out to the Kingsway, because that guy seems like a really cool dude that actually was taking a chance on cinema, it seems.
The one thing with him is though, he's a very rogue guerrilla.
And that's why he connected with you, though,
right.
is because you were being punk and he's rogue and guerrilla.
100%. And I honestly we're not we're friends, we talk, and I go there. But I always give him a shout out because he was the first to give me a shot. And I'm one of those kind of guys that are very appreciative of those kind of things, because I just know how hard it was. No one wouldn't even respond to my emails, right? So I'm always very appreciative of the Kingsway.
So when did you first start doing the scanning? Because I think that's I remember I heard about you because a lot of friends of mine, That's
crazy. That just blows my mind.
I don't love 4K. And everyone knows I don't like 4K. And then these 4K scans started going around, and they were very controversial on Twitter because people are like, oh, they're 4K scans. Is it real? Is it AI? Is it this? Is it that? And they're like, Gala, you must hate this. You must hate these 4K scans. And I was like, no, because if you cannot see a film print, you should see a 4K scan of a film print. That is the exact way you should see it. And then you were trying to get in contact with my dad, and this guy saw your tweet, who I'm friends with.
Yeah, what was his name? He did
Gerardo.
Narco?
Narco Shark.
What was his name again?
Gerardo.
Big shout out to Gerardo.
I know, huge
because he really did connect us together.
Yeah, and he did. And he was like, hey, this guy's trying to get in contact with your dad. And I'm like, okay, send him on over. I'm like, oh my God, it's the 4K scan guy.
Oh, wow.
And it was amazing because when my dad saw your rig, he was like, this guy's legit.
Oh wow.
And when he saw everything, he was like, this guy is actually doing what my dad had been trying to get people to do.
He told me that he longed for doing something like this. Yeah.
And so it's just, when we saw it, it was like, oh my gosh. So when did you first start doing that?
Okay. So this kind of goes back to the Kingsway again. So around that time from 2018 to that era of 2000, this last year, or the last 2023 beforehand, I kind of stopped collecting physical media. I was just always going to the Kingsway, watching films on film, right? Wasn't really watching, wasn't really collecting. And then we got, and I won't give the name, but we got a Blu-ray sponsor, one of the more bigger labels that are out there. Won't give the name. And they sponsored us, and they were giving us Blu-rays, and we were and they were starting to give me Blu-rays. And it was very nice of them. They gave me a whole bunch. And every week they were giving me Blu-rays. And every week, I was going over to their thing and I was getting Blu-rays. So I was starting to collect a bunch of Blu-rays. And it'd been a while since I was collecting. It had been at least 5 years. I was a Laserdisc guy. Right? That's mainly the format that I collected.
It's the highest resolution you can get.
And it's an honest media.
I agree. I'm a Laserdisc girl through and through. We joke about that I'm a VHS girl, but really I grew up on Laserdisc.
Can I be honest why I started collecting Laserdiscs? It's interesting because it was never for the special features. It was never for anything more than this was the only way that you could watch a movie widescreen.
Yeah. It was a widescreen feature. It was
which at the time was rare because if you remember, VHS was all
scan.
Exactly. And if you remember watching a movie like Die Hard 2 or Cliffhanger or anything that's super wide, you get that weird shifting like
Yeah.
pan and scan thing going on.
And sometimes the director is like actually directing the pan and scan, and other times it's just like some random person that's doing it. And when a director does it, like the Dress to Kill pan and scan, Roger and Quentin have discussed how it's pretty good, but you miss certain things when the sides are chopped off, especially in a De Palma film.
Well, with that one, he shot it with the mind that it was going to be pan and scan.
Yeah.
So I'm watching these movies, and I'm watching it on my projector, my TV, whatever, or my LCD or LED TV, whatever. I'm watching these movies, like movies from the 70s and 80s. And I'm like, why do these movies, like, why do they look like CSI? I'm watching them and I'm like, noticing that, like, there's something to these movies. They don't look right. There's like an aesthetic or look. And I'm like, maybe it's my TV. So I went through all the settings. I'm like, okay, this motion is off. All this stuff is off. I went on would read the manual. Then I started putting on my projector. I'm like, fuck, it looks really, really weird. They look flat. Like it looks like a lot of the current media releases, they look flatter than a plate full of piss. Like it just looks wrong. So then I started because you also have to keep in mind, like I'm watching film every week. And I'm noticing, I'm like, these movies just don't have the same textures. So then I went through a rabbit hole online and I started to type in what is this? Like, what's going on here? I would be like film versus 4K. And then I started noticing little Reddit threads where people are talking about this very problem. Then I would go on YouTube and people would show stuff. I was like, okay, I haven't.
You're
lost
not crazy.
Well, that's debatable.
You're
right?
not crazy about this.
But yeah, I mean, for me, it was it blew me away how different these films were. To the point where it was it didn't even feel like the same movie. So then I was look, and then I started to know, I'll never forget this, man. I found a page, I can't remember where, that had Manhunter. It was a 35 millimeter scan of Manhunter. And I'm watching it. And I was like, oh, wow, this looks like film. It's like a scan. This is my first movie that I've seen as a scan. I'm watching the movie. And I'm like, this looks like my print of Manhunter. And then I called up the Kingsway and I was like, hey, Rui, I'm like, this Manhunter that I'm watching, did you lend it out to someone? He's like, yeah, we lent it out to someone and whenever we lend out prints, and Rui and myself, we never charge. We always just give it to them for free.
Well, yeah, because also it's the print collectors, you guys are kind of a consortium of some sort. I don't know how to describe it, or a group of friends.
Big
in a
time.
weird way.
Big time.
You give and take, and you know that if you lend to someone, they're gonna lend back to you eventually.
That's where it gets interesting because we never got it back. We'll get to that. I mean, with Manhunter, and he's like, no, this is our print. I lent it to these kids. We never got them back yet, but it's been a few years. We never got them back. And then I'm watching it, and then I'm watching another movie. I can't remember the movie. I want to say it was The Keep. I may be wrong though. Then I realized, I was like, fuck, this looks like my print as well.
Oh my God, they just have all your prints.
Right? So I'm like, I called up Rui. I'm like, did you give this print to someone? And again, it may not be The Keep, but that's the one that's coming to my head. And then I said to him, I'm like, did you give this print? He's like, yeah. He's like, I'm like, and then I started noticing a lot of the prints that were being scanned were actually my prints.
Oh my God. So they were kind of just, but I also love the fact that you were able to identify your print. Your print well enough that you're like, hey, wait a second. That's my specific print.
There's a reason for that though.
Uh-huh.
Because these specific ones happen to be Italian, right? So that's kind of how I was able to figure it all out, right? And then I'm like, and just started noticing, I'm not to say, again, the movies that are actually scanned at the moment, that's circulating, online, there's not as many as people think. There's probably about maybe 200-300 that are going around. That's not a lot.
No, compared to like how many movies there are every single year, 200 or 300 is not a drop in a bucket.
Yeah, so I'm just like starting out. So like I noticed that like a good 10, 15 prints were ones that were actually mine or from the Kingsway. So then I'm like saying to myself, first off, why didn't these guys tell us this? Number one, right? And because we're both very cool about these kind of things. Like we'll just lend them out and we always tend to get them back. But we never really asked because we didn't know scanning was even a thing. So then I started to say, shit, like I should start doing this myself because I don't think I can I'll be honest with you, Gala. I can't watch Blu-rays anymore or DVDs.
I understand because you can tell the difference of quality. And like when, for example, if I've looked at a movie that you've scanned and then I've looked at like what's available to purchase, and I'm like, it is night and day for me because when I see one of these 4K film scans, I am like, I feel like I am as close to the theater as I'm going to get.
Well, the one thing is like for me, it's like the big difference is like for 4K, for example. The one thing I like about 4K is I feel like people are using the format wrong. They're using 4K to enhance rather than preserve. Because with 4K, you can get like a 1-to-1 ratio like of film to digital. Like it's almost exactly the same. Now 70 millimeter, it needs to be about 10 or 12K or something like that. But like these are like pretty much 1-to-1 copies of the exact movie. The only difference between a film scan and then let's say when you're watching it in 35 on a projector is that projector noise, right? But it's pretty close.
No, it is pretty close. And also it's like when someone takes like, let's say for a Blu-ray, quote unquote, best elements, who knows what that is? When you're scanning a film print, you are getting the theater experience. And that's also one of the reasons why I think like Quentin loves VHS is because all the VHS are taken from film prints.
Well, they're basically scans.
They're scans of film prints.
But like another thing is like, I was noticing like Alien, for example. That's a great example. Or Exorcist, the original Exorcist. You're watching these movies and like forget about like it. Like these people are like, okay, if you can compare like the two, like a scan versus a current home media release, you'll notice that there's like a lot of these green teal filters and these blue filters. And like for me, it's like, let's say you bought a car and it's British Racing green and they give you a car that's orange. Like that's, to me, that's the exact.
You're going to be like, WTF? Like, why did you give me the wrong car?
And the thing is like, Gala, like the one thing is like, people don't realize it because not everybody has the opportunity to watch film like I am able to.
That's the thing, is that there are so many people all around the country that don't have a theater that actually shows film. And I talk to a lot of people that are like, I love film, but I don't have a place where I can go watch it. And like when I come to LA, I get to go to places like the New Beverly or the Vista or the LF3 or the Cinematheque, and I actually get to see a film print. And I had, I used to run like a very small film club, and one of my best friends came, and it was on the night that they all came out to town. We did like a big meetup of all the members, and we went to the New Bev, and it was my best friend's very first time of ever seeing anything on film. And he was like, his mind was blown. He didn't even like the movie. It was like an old Western, and he had never seen something like that. But he was like, I'm sitting here, I'm actually having the magical experience. And before that, he had only ever seen stuff like on his laptop, really.
Well, the thing is, like, magical is a great word because there's a reason why they call it movie magic, right? It does feel more magical. And when you're watching a film on film,
it's a chemical process.
And there's some soul.
My dad always says, though, it's like when you first you have to capture it and you don't know if you've got it on set. Everyone is like trying
It's
to
like a
make
guessing
sure
game.
it's a guessing game. And then you send it off to the sorcerer.
That's part of the fun.
Yeah,
right?
to the sorcerer who has his potion and he's swirling it in his big potion. And then you get it back and you examine what you have. And then you put it through the moving gate with the flickering light. And then people all congregate together and you have an experience, a magical moment where you all experience something together.
Exactly. It's an experience. And for me, another reason to why I love film, you can have one movie, but each print is going to have its individuality.
Well, that's why I love, like when you saw those scans, you're like, I know that's my print.
Exactly.
Like, I know that's mine.
That's exactly. And I thought it was crazy at first, but like there's this individuality that like you don't find with other movies. Like when I'm watching digital, and I'm not to quote like Tarantino or Quentin or whatever, but I do feel like we're watching a DVD in public, right? If I'm watching like a lot of these like so-called restorations that are played in cinemas. And the problem is a lot of these movies, they look like they've gone through an Instagram filter.
Yeah, they do.
And the real big problem, when you really want to get down to it, future artists are going to think that's the way I need to make movies.
It's funny. I was thinking about children, like how kids who are being raised like with this look of what cinema is, and like maybe they've never seen something on film or they're seeing film restorations and it looks like this, they're going to emulate it. And I was literally thinking the other day, like, oh my God, what if all of a sudden television just becomes like, it's normal and like, oh, I can't believe that you're shooting something completely different than like this very slick look.
And the thing is with my son, we go back to my son. Yeah, I let him see R-rated movies, but I don't let him watch digital movies.
Really?
I do. But he watches a lot of 35 millimeter movies. He's used to it. He's like, why does daddy always have to watch a movie in the projector room? Or why can't we watch a movie in the living room?
Why can't we be like normal people and just pop a DVD in?
And he's like, oh, and what I'll do sometimes, I know it's not good, but let's say we do have a digital copy of a movie. It's not just watching a movie with me anymore. Like I'll have to go downstairs and I'll be like to my wife, I'll be like, what do you want to watch? She'll be like, oh, this movie. Okay, give me like 4 hours. I'm going to color correct it, add some like digital, add some digital grain to it, just so at least add some flicker. So at least I can trick ourselves that we're watching a movie. Because I literally can't stand watching the classic films that I love look the way it's looking today.
Well, also one thing that my dad always describes to me is that like one person that's really been removed from the equation is the projectionist, and how a projectionist had such a big role in film because you either had a good projectionist or a bad projectionist, and sometimes projectionists knew to like ride the gate or like, oh, this print is gonna like need like a little bit more love or color correction, or oh, the director actually wants you to turn up the volume in these scenes, or put a filter on
certain bulb.
Exactly.
They always say like the projectionist is the final editor of the movie.
Yeah, and we totally have that like lost nowadays. It's insane. But when, especially like with DVD, like my dad also cites, I think it's Dune, how Dune had so many layers of degradation. David Lynch's Dune had so many layers of degradation, and then like the final battle was the projectionist who knew what the DP was doing to color correct. And now on the Blu-ray, everything looks green.
Exactly.
But really, it's not meant to look green, and people now think it is supposed to, and they make fun of it for it.
Exactly. And in the beginning, when I started bringing more awareness, more awareness online, people were fighting it. Like people were like, nah, that's not how it's supposed to look. Like I'll never forget one thing, actually. Barry Lyndon. I saw Barry Lyndon at the Prince Charles, and I'll never forget, man. I was in the theater writing notes about how the film looked. And the main way I was able to like write notes, what I was doing was paying attention to their uniforms. And I would notice, and this was a pristine print of Barry Lyndon at the Prince Charles in the UK. So this print was pristine. Like it looked like it had played maybe 5 or 6 times. And I'm looking at like the uniforms, and like, let's say the blues had like a blackish blue to it. The purples looked blackish. The reds looked darker. And I'll never forget when I went home or to my home in England. I had Barry Lyndon and I started doing the colors, correcting it exactly how I remembered it. And I'll never forget this. I had my friend that saw it with me and my wife. And I was like showing it to them. I'm like, this is how it looked, right? And they're like, yeah. So what I did after was I went on Twitter and I was like, this is how the 35 millimeter.
This is how he meant it to look.
I put a picture of the 35 millimeter movie, a picture. And again, it was just a close, rough idea of how it looked. And next to the Criterion, and everybody, I would say everybody was like, no, the Criterion is right.
That's insane because like you just saw what the director, as close to what the director just meant for it to look like. And they're saying, no, you're wrong. But that's also what I mean when we were talking in the kitchen. I think you were in the conversation about like the Twitter film bros going to the movies and it's groupthink. Mm-hmm. It's like you think that, because this, not to bash Criterion, but because this big label has deemed that this is the quote unquote best version of the movie, that it is the truest. And that's not true.
And the thing is, like, watching it, like, you can see it. Like, you can see the difference. And like, that was a big eye opener for me because I was shocked at how many people were like, oh, that looks like garbage. It looks too overexposed or it looks too warm. The trees aren't supposed to look black. But like, you guys don't realize that when Kubrick shot this movie, he shot it on a special kind of film stock where it doesn't require lights. And we all know the NASA lens thing, right?
And we know the NASA lens thing. And also we know that it's like all lit with candlelight, etc. But it's so strange because also people have an idea of what old movies should look like. It's like sepia or the gate weave. And it's actually like, no, when those prints were pristine, they didn't have those things.
Another thing is like, because they weren't using lighting and they were using like a stock that's like really sensitive to like that works better, that you need a minimal amount of lighting to shoot with, you're gonna get wonky colors. And I've noticed that with a lot of films that are shot, you'll get these like really weird wonky colors and people just will look at it and be like, no, that's not how it's supposed to look. And I've been blown away by like how many people will be like, and I've gotten film scans without telling people this is a film scan. Posted 2 pictures up and you'll notice like everyone be like picking the blue. Because why? Because they think cleaner is better. But the problem with that is once you start degraining, you start cleaning. Not only do you start, when you degrain, what happens is you start to like really mess up the colors and colors start looking flush. But when you start cleaning everything, you're giving away too much information on the actual screen.
And also, it's just not how the director intended it to look. I mean, every now and then you'll have a director go back and make edits on their own movie. Friedkin or with Star Wars, like adding like people blinking in the background. And I guess like, yeah, a painter will keep painting until the brush is taken away.
But is that good?
I don't think it's good. When I don't think it's good is when they take the original version away from you.
Exactly.
Like when Friedkin took Exorcist away from the public, like you can only show the director's cut. It kills me inside.
And the thing is, like with The Exorcist, for example, the original one, it's very hard to find.
Oh yeah, it's like really hard. You basically have to have it on physical media, and then you like,
and then you have a blue version of the movie.
I know, and then it's like you're like, what is going on here, and why does everything look blue?
So yeah, no, it just started to like, and then what happened was, and I'm gonna be honest with you, like, this is where it kind of like took a turning point, and when the scanning got very serious for me, is I started to like, for me, like. Because this was something that I was very passionate about and I thought it was a very serious problem. I was like, okay, when you have like something new, which is actually kind of an old thing, but when you have something new and you're introducing it to the public, sometimes, and I don't recommend this, but sometimes you have to break the rules. And I just started putting up scans. And a lot of my inspiration was like, I would listen to your dad talk about recording stuff on the Z channel and then putting it at the video archives. And sometimes to get that kind of awareness, you have to have that guerrilla approach. And because no other company is going to do that. And if nobody knows about it, how else are you going to get the word out? Like back in the day, for example, like movies like Cannibal Holocaust, all those kind of movies, they weren't easy to, you couldn't just go to like your Blockbuster and find those.
Can you imagine going to Blockbuster to find Cannibal Holocaust?
Imagine, yeah, no. You had to like go to like Fangoria Weekend of Horrors and buy like a dub of it, or, you know, go online and like find some illegal website to like buy a copy of like the Fulci movies and the Lamberto Bava movies and Argento movies. Those movies were not, especially if you didn't have Laserdisc, good luck. I mean, there was stuff out there, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't easy to find.
It's amazing though. So it's like now you're doing it and you were guerrilla and now you're
Totally.
And now you're kind of moving into legit realm.
Wow. The legit thing really is, this is how it started. I had never had the intention of it going legit. But what happened was I had a person message me. He was actually a guy that's in my genre, and he was a friend of mine, like, you know, and he goes by the name High Contrast. He's a big artist in the UK, almost like pop. Like he's been nominated for Grammys, very big. Like he's very big in the genre out there. And he messaged me and he's like, I love what you're doing. Like, this is amazing. And we've always been on and off, like, you know, we'd always be on and off with connecting with each other. I always knew he loved cinema and I love cinema. And in my genre of music, you only are around other musicians who only want to talk about themselves, right? Really, that's all it is. And then, I don't know, he one day he messaged me or he called me. I can't remember what it was. He called me and he's like, look, Peter, I think we should go legit. I think you should go legit with this. And I'm like, Lincoln, like, you think so? Like, what? He's like, yeah, I think we should do this together. And first off, number one, I was really like, whoa, this like guy who's been nominated for like 2 Grammys. You know, he's like this really popular guy in the UK. He wants to work with me. And like, I'll be honest with you, with Scanners Incorporated, yeah, I'm doing all the scanning and doing a lot of the color correction and restoring. But if it wasn't for Lincoln, this was all his idea. Like the whole packaging and how we should do it, the whole approach. He was like, Peter, like we see all these other labels doing it. We should do it together. He was the one who really got the ball rolling. Like, honestly, like if it wasn't for Lincoln, I wouldn't have been messaging you. We wouldn't be here right now talking. Literally.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
shout out to Lincoln.
Yes, big time. He's a big part of this. If not, I would just still be Pirate Pete. You know, pirate, you know, like, you know what I mean? Like, and
You'd still be punk.
And I'm an artist, but there's a level to how far you can go with that.
Yeah. And now you're going legit.
Yeah, we're going legit. So that's been very great.
So you know what? That is all the time that we have for today. But Peter, I wanted to ask, is there any final thought that you want to share with the audience?
Final thought. My final thought is you should see Return of the Living Dead.
Yeah, he found out that I haven't seen it yet.
My final thought is support your local cinemas. Watch 35 millimeter movies. Watch film. Because I'm really, really worried about the current state of art and cinema. And I think that everybody should experience film the way it was meant to be seen. And I think with 35 millimeter scans, it gives the opportunity for people to experience this. But also, the main thing is, film doesn't last forever. Film is like a human. And there is a lifespan. And preserving them through digital sources is a way to help preserve these movies that when I'm gone, when you're gone, when all of us in this room are gone, future generations will be able to watch these movies the way it was meant to be seen. That's very important to me. I'm very passionate about that. And I think it's a very important thing.
Thank you again, Peter, for coming onto the show. You can find Peter and his work at NC-17 on both Twitter and Instagram. And also, I think there will be a website up.
Yes, it is scannersincorporated.com. And it's just pretty much a landing page. But if you join our mailing list, you will know what's coming.
Again, that's scannersincorporated.com.
Yes.
I'm Gala Avery, and this has been The Gala Show. The Gala Show is brought to you by Avery.com. This episode was executive produced by Roger Avery and produced by Gala Avery. Music composed by Andy Milburn. Additional sound mixing by Eric Clapp. As always, I'm your host, Gala Avery. Copyright 2024, all rights reserved. Despite me sharing the same last name with this charity, I don't have any affiliation with it, besides the fact that the issue is very near and dear to my heart. Did you know that in the United States, 2.7 million children currently have a parent in prison, and it's estimated that 10 million children have experienced parental incarceration at some point in their lives? I was one of these kids, and as an adult, I am really grateful to be able to give back to Project Avery. Their mission is to build leadership from within by supporting community through programs such as mentoring and outdoor education, and also to remove the stigma surrounding having a parent that's incarcerated. You don't have to feel alone. If you know a kid who could use these resources or would like to donate money or time to the charity, please go to Project Avery, that's AVARY.org, to check out what this amazing charity is all about. Again, that's projectavery.org. Thank you guys from the bottom of my heart.